My wife secretly conspired with her brother to steal our parents' $500, $0 inheritance, then manipulated me into signing away my rights to the family estate. Now she's planning to divorce me and I fear she'll walk away with everything. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here, writing about how my wife turned out to be nothing but a manipulative, lying cheat. Honestly, I thought we had a good thing going, or at least I did. We'd been married for 8 years, and I always believed she was my partner, my best friend. But then I started noticing little things, small, weird inconsistencies that didn't quite add up. It started with her phone. She'd be secretive about it, hiding the screen when I walked into the room, deleting texts, staying late at work under the guise of overtime. But the real bombshell dropped when I found the receipts. I was digging through our financial files, trying to get a handle on some bills, and I noticed a transfer of $30, $0 to an account I'd never seen before. I thought maybe it was a mistake, but then I saw more. Small transfers, large ones, all to an account in her brother Mark's name. Mark's a guy I never trusted much, always trying to be the cool kid, but I never thought he'd get involved in something like this. Turns out, had been secretly conspiring with Mark to siphon off part of our parents' inheritance 500, they'd left us when they passed, and then she manipulated me into signing legal documents that gave her control over our family estate. That's when I realized the whole picture was even worse than I thought. Had been lying to me for months. She'd been pretending to be supportive, caring, when in reality she was planning her next move. And her plan, to take everything we had, including the estate, and walk away with it all while I was left holding the bag. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. It's one thing to suspect something off, but to see it laid out in black and white, that she'd been plotting with her own brother to steal from our parents and then turn around and screw me over, was a whole new level of betrayal. I remember the moment I found the receipts. I was sitting at the dining table, staring at the screen of my laptop, feeling numb. My hands started trembling. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind raced. How could she be so cold, so calculating? How could she lie to me for so long? And the worst part, she kept insisting she loved me, that everything was just a misunderstanding, that I was overreacting. But I knew better. I'd seen her texts with Mark, heard her lying about where she'd been. She'd even started canceling plans, giving me flimsy excuses. That's when I started piecing things together. Was a master manipulator. She knew exactly how to play the victim, how to twist stories so I'd doubt my own instincts. Tell me I was paranoid, that I was imagining things, that I was jealous and insecure. Meanwhile, she was out screwing her brother and scheming to take our inheritance. I felt so betrayed, so angry I could barely breathe. My mind kept circling back to what I might have done wrong, but deep down I knew I'd been played. I'd been so blind, so trusting. The worst part, she was planning her divorce already. I found out because she started acting even more bitchy, more dismissive. She'd snap at me for the smallest thing, accuse me of being controlling just because I asked about her whereabouts. She'd lie outright, swear she was working late or hanging out with friends. Yet I'd find her car parked at Mark's place, or her phone bill showed calls to his number late into the night. She accused me of paranoia, but I knew better. I knew she was cheating on me, and worse, she was stealing from my family along the way. It hit me hard. How could I have missed all these signs? How could I have been so stupid? I was supposed to be the loyal husband, the provider. But now I was sitting here, feeling betrayed, humiliated, and furious. The only thing I knew for sure was that I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. I had to figure out what to do next, how to protect what was left, how to stop her from taking everything I cared about. I started planning my next move. I needed proof, more concrete evidence before I confronted her. I couldn't just accuse her blindly. But I knew one thing for certain, was dangerous. She was manipulative and cunning. And I had to be smarter than her if I wanted to stop her from destroying what little was left of my life. That's when I realized I had to act fast. The game was on, and I was in it to win, no matter how dirty it got. I started digging deeper into her phone and bank accounts. I knew I had to be careful, was a master at covering her tracks, and I didn't want to tip her off until I had everything solid. so I installed a monitoring app on her phone without her knowing. It was risky, but I had no choice. I needed to see what she was doing, who she was talking to, and where she was going. Over the next few days, I watched as her behavior changed even more. She became more defensive, more secretive. She'd leave her phone lying around, but then quickly grab it when I entered the room. She started canceling plans with her friends, claiming she was working late or tired. But her car was always at Mark's house, and her phone logs showed late-night calls to him. I was sick to my stomach, realizing how deep her lies went. One night I caught her red-handed. I was going through her messages and I saw a conversation with Mark that made my blood boil. They were planning how to split up the inheritance, how to hide the money from me, and how I was going to get her hands on the estate once she divorced me. She called herself the clever wife, and Mark called her his partner in crime. It was all laid out in black and white. I couldn't believe she'd been so blatant about it. The next morning, I confronted her. I told her I knew everything about her affair, her scheme with Mark, and her betrayal. Her reaction was instant. She looked at me with those icy, bitchy eyes and lied through her teeth. She said she was just talking to her brother about a family emergency, that I was paranoid and jealous. She even had the nerve to call me insecure, like I was the one at fault. She everything, insisting she loved me and that I was imagining things. But I wasn't stupid anymore. I had proof, and I wasn't going to let her spin her way out of it. Confrontation was intense. I felt a mix of rage, heartbreak, and disgust. I told her I knew she was cheating and stealing from my family. I told her I was done trusting her. She sneered at me, said I was overreacting, that I was trying to control her, that I was just jealous because she was so beautiful and desirable. That made me angrier. How could she be so manipulative? How could she lie so easily? I told her I was going to get a lawyer, that I'd expose everything, her affair, her con, her betrayal. She laughed at me, a cold, bitter laugh. Said she'd make sure I got nothing, that she'd walk away with the estate, the house, the money, and that I'd be left with nothing. That's when I realized she was already planning her escape. She was setting me up to be the villain, the one who couldn't see what was happening. But I wasn't going down without a fight. I told her she'd regret this, that she'd regret messing with me, and I meant every word. That night I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything in my head, the lies, the betrayal, the money. I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My trust was shattered and my sense of reality was crumbling. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it sooner, how I'd been so blind to her true nature. She always played the victim, the sweet wife, the caring partner. But behind that mask, she was just a manipulative bitch who was willing to destroy our lives for money and her own selfish ends. I realized I had to act fast. I contacted a lawyer, someone who specialized in family law and estate disputes. I needed to know my rights, my options. I also decided I'd get a private investigator to follow her. I couldn't rely on just my suspicions anymore. I needed hard evidence. I knew was planning her divorce, probably to get her hands on everything she could. And I was terrified she'd do it all, walk away with the estate, the money, and leave me with nothing. The feeling of betrayal cut so deep. I'd always thought we were on the same team. Turns out she was just using me, using our life together to get what she wanted. I kept asking myself how I could missed all of this, how I could been so naive, so trusting. But I knew one thing for sure, I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. I had to protect what was mine, my dignity, my money, my future. And I'd do whatever it took to stop her from walking away with everything. After I gathered enough evidence, screenshots of her conversations with Mark, bank statements showing the transfers, and her suspicious phone activity, I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with everything laid out on the table. I set up a meeting at a neutral place, a quiet coffee shop nearby, so I could talk to her without her feeling cornered. I wanted her to see I was serious, that I had the upper hand now. When she arrived, she was her usual bitchy self, trying to act like she was the victim. She threw those icy looks, rolling her eyes, acting like I was overreacting, like I was the crazy one. I didn't hold back. I pulled out my phone and showed her the evidence. Her face went pale for a second, then turned red with anger. She tried to deny everything, of course, claiming I Was stalking her, that I was paranoid, that Mark was just a friend, and I was making a mountain out of a molehill. But I didn't let her spin her lies. I told her I had enough, that I knew about her affair, her scheme to steal from our family, and that I was done being played. Her reaction was a mixture of rage and panic. She started yelling, calling me crazy, saying I was ruining everything because I didn't trust her. She said I was controlling, jealous, and that she'd never cheat on me, she just had friends. She said just innocent conversations. Yeah, right, I knew better. I told her I wasn't going to settle for her lies anymore. I told her I was going to lawyer up and that she'd be hearing from them soon. That's when she dropped the bomb. She said she was planning to divorce me anyway, that she'd already spoken to a lawyer and that she'd take everything. Our house, the estate, the money. She looked at me with that bitchy smirk and said she'd walk away with more than she ever dreamed, leaving me with nothing. For a second, I felt like the ground was shifting beneath me. She was planning her escape and she thought she had the upper hand, but I was already one step ahead. I told her she wasn't getting away with it. I said I'd fight her for everything, every dollar, every asset, every piece of the estate she was trying to steal. I knew I had the evidence, and I was ready to take this to court if I had to. I was furious, but I kept my voice steady. I told her she could keep lying, keep pretending she was innocent, but I wasn't going to let her destroy my life. I also told her I'd be reporting her to the authorities for the fraud and theft, and I'd make sure the truth came out. She looked at me with a mixture of contempt and fear. For a woman so bitchy and manipulative, she was starting to crack. I could see the panic behind her eyes. That was the moment I realized I had her cornered. She couldn't deny the evidence anymore. She couldn't spin her way out of this. And I was finally starting to feel some sense of control, like I was reclaiming my life from her claws. The aftermath of that meeting was intense. She stormed out, screaming obscenities and calling me a jealous psycho, but I didn't care. I knew I had what I needed. I contacted my lawyer that same day, handed over all the evidence, and started preparing for a legal battle. I also hired a private investigator to keep tabs on her. I wasn't about to let her slip away with everything while I sat around feeling sorry for myself. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious all at once. I kept asking myself how she could be so cold, so calculating. She'd always been bitchy, yes, but this level of manipulation and greed was something else entirely. I'd trusted her for so long, and now I was questioning everything: my judgment, my marriage, my entire life. But I also knew I couldn't let her win. I had to fight for what was mine, for my dignity, and for the future I still wanted to salvage. That night I couldn't sleep. All I could think about was how I'd let her manipulate me for so long, how I'd been blind to her true nature. I kept replaying her words, her lies, her sneers. I realized I'd been a fool to think she was ever truly on my side. But now I was done being the fool. I was ready to stand up, fight back, and take control of this sinking ship she'd tried to steer into the ground. Because I knew one thing for sure: I wasn't going to let her take everything without a fight. Not anymore. The legal process moved faster than I expected once I handed over all the evidence. My lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense guy named Tom, told me I had a strong case, especially with the bank transfers, her messages, and her suspicious behavior. He warned me that might try to drag things out, spin more lies, maybe even try to manipulate the court or play the victim, but he assured me that with solid proof I'd be okay. Still, I knew this was just the beginning, was cunning, and I had to stay one step ahead. In the meantime, I hired a private investigator, Mike, to follow her around. I needed to know if she was sneaking around, meeting Mark, or doing anything else shady. I felt sick every time I saw her car parked at Mark's place or caught her texting late at night. Every new piece of evidence made my stomach turn, but I also felt a strange sense of clarity. I was finally seeing her for what she really was: an ambitious, manipulative bitch willing to do anything to get what she wanted. A week after I confronted her at the coffee shop, she called me, trying to play innocent. She claimed I was overreacting, that she loved me, and that I was just insecure. She begged me to forgive her, said she'd never do anything to hurt me. It was all lies, I could tell. She was trying to sway me, to make me doubt what I knew was real, but I wasn't buying it anymore. I told her I had enough, that I was done with her lies and that I was going to fight for my rights. That's when she got bitchy, screaming, crying, calling me a controlling psycho. She even accused me of cheating, trying to turn the tables. Meanwhile, the court hearing started. The judge looked at the evidence and quickly saw through her lies. She tried to claim she was just trying to protect the family estate, that I was jealous and paranoid. But her words rang hollow. Everyone could see she was the one scheming behind the scenes. Her lawyer tried to argue that she was the victim, that I was trying to control her, but the judge wasn't buying it. The evidence was too strong. As the weeks went on, true colors kept coming out. She began to panic, making desperate attempts to manipulate the situation. She started calling me, begging for a peaceful resolution, promising she'd stop the divorce if I just dropped the case. She even tried to guilt-trip me, saying I was ruining her life, that she'd be destitute without the estate. I saw her for what she was, an entitled, greedy bitch who thought she could get away with everything. I refused to be played anymore. I told her I wouldn't settle, that I was going all the way to make sure she paid for her lies. One night she showed up at my house unexpectedly, crying and begging for forgiveness. She said she was sorry, that she'd change, that she loved me and only me. I looked at her and felt nothing but disgust. I told her to leave, that I'd had enough of her manipulations. I couldn't trust her anymore, not after everything I'd uncovered. That was the moment I decided I was done trying to salvage this mess. I'd fought hard, but I realized I was better off without her. The aftermath was a whirlwind. The court awarded me temporary custody of the estate while the case was ongoing. Attempts to claim she was innocent or that I was trying to steal from her fell apart under the weight of the evidence. She was furious, calling me all kinds of names, but I didn't care. I knew I'd done everything I could to protect what was mine. I also started the process of separating our finances, making sure she couldn't drain the accounts or transfer anything further. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness. Relief that I was finally taking control, but sadness for what I'd lost. Looking back, I realize how much I'd been blind. I trusted because I wanted to believe in the best of her, but she was just a con artist in disguise. She played me, lied to me, manipulated me, and almost away with it. I learned the hard way that sometimes the people closest to you can turn out to be the biggest predators. I also learned that you have to be ruthless when protecting what's yours. No matter how much it hurts, you can't let someone like her walk all over you. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life. I'm working with my lawyer to finalize everything legally, making sure she gets nothing she doesn't deserve. I've started therapy to deal with the emotional fallout, and I've cut ties with entirely. I want nothing to do with her. The whole ordeal has left me bitter, angry, and cautious, but I also feel stronger. I know I'll be okay. I just wish I'd seen her for what she was sooner. If I could give any advice to anyone going through something similar, trust your instincts, keep your eyes open, and never let anyone manipulate or steal from you, no matter how convincing they seem. The truth always comes out eventually. The court case dragged on longer than I expected, but in the end, the evidence I had gathered proved too strong for to deny. The judge ruled in my favor, awarding me control over the estate and ordering her to pay back the stolen money plus damages for the fraud. Seeing her face when the verdict was read, that mixture of rage, shock, and utter disbelief, was almost worth all the stress and betrayal I'd endured. She had tried to manipulate her way out, to spin her lies, but the truth was clear. She was a thief, a liar, and a manipulative bitch who thought she could walk away with everything. After the court decision, true colors came out even more. She started making veiled threats, saying she'd ruin me, that she'd expose everything I'd done wrong, that I'd regret fighting her. But honestly, I didn't care anymore. I had already lost so much trust, but I gained clarity. I realized she was capable of anything. She'd already proven her willingness to lie, cheat, and steal. I knew I had to protect myself from any future damage she might try to do. I hired security to monitor the house, just in case she decided to show up unannounced. I changed all the locks, transferred the remaining funds into accounts I controlled outright, and cut off all communication with her. I moved out. of the house temporarily, staying with a friend while I sorted everything out. The emotional toll was immense. I felt like I'd been betrayed by someone I once loved, and it left me feeling hollow. But at the same time, I felt a strange sense of relief. I was finally free of her lies, her manipulations, her bitchy attitude. In the aftermath, I also started to rebuild my life outside of the chaos. I threw myself into work, into hobbies I'd neglected, and into reconnecting with friends I'd drifted away from during the marriage. I knew I needed time to heal physically, emotionally, mentally. I also sought therapy, which helped me process the betrayal and rebuild my confidence. For a long time, I kept asking myself how I'd let her manipulate me so thoroughly, how I'd missed all the signs. But I also learned that sometimes, you only see the truth once everything is laid bare. Looking back, I realize I was deeply naive. I thought I knew her, thought she was the woman I married, the woman I loved. But she was just a con artist, a master manipulator who used her charm and bitchy attitude to hide her true intentions. I've been so blinded by love and trust that I didn't see the red flags until it was almost too late. Now I see clearly. Trust is earned, not given blindly. And I learned to be cautious, because some people, especially manipulative ones are capable of tearing your life apart if you're not careful. The biggest lesson I've taken from all this is that no matter how much you love someone, if they're lying, cheating, and stealing from you, especially from your family, you have to stand up for yourself. You have to protect what's yours. I wish I'd done it sooner, but I'm glad I finally did. It's not easy to admit you were played, but it's necessary if you want to move forward. I've come out the other side battered but stronger, more aware of the kinds of people you should never trust. Now, I'm focusing on rebuilding my life piece by piece. I've started dating again cautiously, but I've learned to take things slow. I don't want to fall for another manipulator. I want someone honest, someone who values trust and integrity. I don't think I'll ever fully recover from the betrayal but I know I'll be okay. I've learned that even in the darkest moments there's hope, and that sometimes the biggest lessons come from the worst betrayals. So if anyone out there is dealing with a partner who seems suspicious, or if you're feeling unsure about the person you married, trust your gut. Don't ignore the red flags, because if you do, you might end up like me, caught in a nightmare you never saw coming, fighting to reclaim what's left of your life. And trust me, it's a fight worth fighting. Looking back, I can't believe how much my life changed in just a few months. One day, I was a guy married to a woman I thought I knew, and the next, I was fighting to protect what little was left after she betrayed me in the worst way possible. That bitch, she was so bitchy, so manipulative, so damn good at hiding her true nature. She almost got away with stealing everything from my family, including our inheritance and my trust. The whole ordeal has left scars, but it's also made me stronger. I've learned that people like her can wear masks for a long time, and if you're not careful, they'll destroy you. Without a second thought, I've learned to listen to that little voice inside, to trust my instincts, and to never let anyone manipulate me again. Trust isn't something you give freely, it's something you earn, and if someone shows you they're untrustworthy, like did, then you cut them out of your life, no matter how much it hurts. I've also realized how important it is to stand up for yourself, especially when it feels like the whole world is against you. Thought she could walk all over me, that her bitchy attitude and manipulative tactics would keep her in control. But I fought back, I gathered evidence, I took legal action, and I made sure she paid for her lies and her theft. It's not about revenge, exactly. It's about justice. About making sure she doesn't get away with destroying what's rightfully mine. And I've come to accept that sometimes you have to lose everything to find yourself again. I lost my marriage, my trust, and a lot of money, but I gained clarity. I found out who my real friends are. I learned to stand up for myself, and I realized I don't need a manipulative woman like in my life. I don't need someone who lies, cheats, and steals for her own selfish ends. What I do need is to rebuild from the ashes and focus on what truly matters, myself, my future, and the integrity I once thought I had. If there's one thing I want anyone reading this to take away, it's this: never ignore the red flags. Don't let anyone manipulate your love or your trust. And if you find yourself in a situation like mine, don't be afraid to fight back, even if it means tearing down the illusion you once believed in. Because in the end, the truth always comes out, and the only way to truly be free is to face it head on. I don't regret the pain I've gone through, because it's made me who I am today, wiser, tougher, and more cautious. I know now that betrayal can come from the people you least expect, but you have the power to take control and protect yourself. I've learned that no amount of bitchy attitude or false charm can hide a manipulative heart. And most importantly, I've learned that I deserve better, someone honest, loyal, and real. So if you're going through something similar, remember, trust your instincts, gather your evidence, fight for your rights, and never let anyone steal your peace. Because at the end of the day, your life is yours, and nobody should be able to take it away from you, not even a bitchy wife with a scheme up her sleeve.